My name is Martin Tyner, and this is Belle. This is our Harris Hawk, and we've been asked a lot of questions about the wildlife ambassadors that we use for our educational programs, and so we're just kind of here today to visit a little bit and answer some of your questions. Hatch date was March 22nd, 2018. License date to when she basically came to us was August 8th, 2018. Her name is she is a Harris Hawk, and the Harris Hawk is a North American bird. We find them here in the United States, southern Arizona, New Mexico, and Texas. Uh, though this little gal came out of a captive breeding program out of Louisiana, and that's where she gets the name Belle from because she's my little Southern Belle. The scientific name is Parabudio, and what the Parabudio is Budio is a broad-winged hawk, and this and para is kind of like saying it's a broad-winged hawk, but not really. And so your Budios are red-tailed hawks, Swainson's hawks, ferruginous hawks, rough-leg hawks. There's a lot of Budios, which is the broad-winged hawk, and because the Harris hawk has a broad rounded wing, but it has a very long tail, like an accipiter hawk, and she has longer legs, more like an accipiter hawk, but she's much more beefy and much more powerful than most accipiter hawks. So she's classified as a parabudio. Yeah, a group of one. Yeah, the Harris hawk is the only parabudio because she's they're so unique in their design. This little gal um, is about 42, 43 ounces in weight. Is so she's a very large Harris hawk. Thank you for keeping it on the plastic. I appreciate that. Wingspan about 3 feet, and so they don't have a long wingspan. It's a relatively shorter, rounder, broad. Um, they're not a high speed soaring bird. They're basically more agile. They're a sprint kind of a bird.
And can we
A
see
pretty
her wings out?
show your pretty wings. Diet in the wild, they eat a wide variety of, of rodents, small reptiles, and birds. Here in captivity, she gets kind of the same. She gets a lot of rats and mice, and she gets quail, and she gets pigeon, and she gets rabbits. And so we try to duplicate their diet as much as we possibly can in captivity to help keep them healthy. Activities. Well, the nice thing is she is one of my falconry birds, not just a wildlife ambassador. So the hunting season's from September through February. We go out on the desert, and this equipment right here comes off, and she flies free. And she and I go wandering out through the brush out of the desert, flushing rabbits for her to catch. And so she spends a great deal of time chasing rabbits. She then in the off season, which is where we're at right now, she basically uh, spends her time hanging out with me. She likes to come in the house. In fact, She sleeps in the house. In the wintertime, it's too cold for the Harris hawk because they're a southern bird, and so she has a perch in an unfinished room down in my basement that she comes and hangs out in the perch. And then in the evening times, she does like to just kind of hang out, with, throw a towel down, and hang out in the living room, and we watch television together. And so she just is kind of a member of the family. And then we travel throughout the Western United States doing school programs and scout programs and community event programs. And so she's a great wildlife ambassador. She's a wonderful, wonderful educator. And you know, other than that, she's just kind of fat and sassy right now, aren't you? Yes, you are. Temperament. The Harris Hawk in general is one of the finest. Sorry about knocked over my water. Some of the finest temperament birds in the world. They are the only one of the only birds of prey in the world that hunts in packs like wolves. So they hunt in groups, and so they're really good about cooperating and working together as a team. And that makes them uniquely qualified in falconry because they work, when raised and handled properly, they work with humans. She's a hunter, I'm her dog, and so we develop a partnership that's really quite rare in the animal world. So that communal, cooperative personality that they have. They are very stable dispositions. This is not a high strung or nervous animal like some of the other hawks and falcons can be, and so just an absolute joy. Also, their intelligence, extremely bright. They do remember everything. um, and so you they learn how to capitalize, and they learn how to use people in assisting them in their ability to hunt and catch food for themselves. So really super smart, certainly smarter than most birds of prey. Not in all, but certainly smarter than most. Personality, like I said, um, just gentle, sweet, wonderful to work with. Um, Adaptable, just a great animal. Belle is really very, very typical of the Harris Hawks that I've worked with. Um, I really have never had a Harris Hawk or worked with a Harris Hawk um, that wasn't just a joy to be able to handle and to work with. And Belle is exactly the same. Um, but in saying that, if you don't raise them properly, um, they because of they are so incredibly intelligent, um, they can be a real nightmare. They can actually be quite dangerous. If you have one of these hawks and you raise them inappropriately and you imprint them to humans, and they have no respect for humans, they can be dangerous. And if you do something to offend them, they will hurt you. And so, but when they're handled appropriately, um, then they are just an absolutely wonderful animal to work with. I've had Harris hawks that were quite dangerous. I had another female very much like Belle here that had been stolen from its nest by some teenage boys and imprinted and raised badly and abused and all that kind of thing. And she was quite dangerous. I had to be very careful, because she'd attack people in the field. And in fact, she was so emotionally disturbed, her favorite thing to hunt was cows. If there was a cow within a mile, she had to go beat up a cow. And so they can be dangerous and hard to work with if you don't have the skills and expertise to handle them and raise them properly. But when they're raised properly, like I said, there isn't a more gentle and interesting animal on the planet than a well handled Harris hawk for falconry and for education. Belle is, like I said, a dear member of the family, and she came to us. Like I said, she came out of a captive breeding program out of Louisiana, and so we contacted the breeder, and the breeder shipped her to us, and my sweet wife Susan and I, the closest airport that we could fly them into was Salt Lake International, which is about a 5 hour drive from us here. And so we drove up to Salt Lake City to the airport, and they got her off the plane and got her into cargo area, and we picked her up, and it was all blocked off, so we really couldn't even see her. And so we got this. As soon as we got her home, I had all the equipment ready to put on her, the leather anklets, the bells, the leather straps called Jesse's, and the swivel, and everything was ready to go. And we got her out of her box. We got her outfitted so that with all of her equipment, and and then we spent a great deal of time sitting up here in the living room with her on my glove and just starting to get her used to her environment. And at first, she was nervous because it was a new place, but um, it didn't take her very long, just a few days, and she settled in and started to accept me and the surroundings and started to enjoy her life. And we have lots of videos on our YouTube channel of her first day with us and the processes we go through in training her and videos of her out flying free and hunting rabbits. And so on our YouTube channel is a great place to go and learn uh, a lot about Belle and a lot about Harris Hawks and a lot about Falcon. Treats, again, food is more of a necessity than a treat for her. Um, I think her favorite food is jackrabbit, but it's to be honest with you, it doesn't really matter if it's jackrabbit or mice or quail or pigeon or cottontail or basically she enjoys eating, and so she likes all of the normal food. And let me qualify this for everybody else that you do need to understand if you think you're going to be a falconer, you do have to understand that you can't go to the local grocery store and get dead rats in the frozen food section. And so you have to set up the ability to provide food, whether you order in frozen quail, rats, and mice from companies like we use a company called Rodent Pro, that we order in thousands and thousands of dollars of frozen food every year for the animals, or whether you breed your own, rats and mice and raise your own quail or raise your own pigeons, but you do have to develop a food source when you're working with these animals. You cannot feed them meat. Meat is not good for them. You have to feed them whole animals. As far as activities, her very favorite thing in the world to do is to go hunting, and so that's her biggest motivation. I mean, she does really well when we travel and do our shows. Um, she does very well when visiting people privately here at my home and hang around and going for walks and those kinds of things. But she knows that you know her personality starts to change. She knows that when we start to bring her weight down a little bit, so she becomes a little bit hungry, um, then her keenness picks up and her personality gets sharper, and she's starting to act like an apex predator. And and when we go out in the field, she knows that we're going. It's different, and she knows that it's different. When I put her in the hawk box, the transport box, um, she knows if we're going to go do a show uh, versus whether we're going to go hunting. How she knows, I'm not sure, whether she just reads my body language or what it is, but she knows, and she wants to get into that box, and she wants to get out to the field, and she wants to go out and hunt and chase rabbits. That's the funnest thing that she likes to do. Life expectancy in the wild is about 7 to 10 years for a Harris hawk like this. In captivity, we can double that. 15 to 20 years would be considered normal. My last Harris Hawk was named Thumper. It was a male, and he lived 29 years before he passed away. And about the last 10 years, he certainly had slowed down a bunch. He really didn't hunt very much, but he liked to go out to the field and fly free, and he'd go chase lizards. But he did like his personal time. And so Belle right here, she should be around for close to 30 years as a friend and as a companion, as a wildlife ambassador.